29.
28 seconds.
27.
26.
25 seconds.
24. 23.
22 seconds.
21 seconds.
20 seconds.
19.
18.
17 seconds.
16.
15 seconds.
14.
13 seconds.
12.
11. 10 seconds. 9.
8.
7.
6.
Copy.
5 seconds.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome, cadets, to Subspace Chatter. Over the course of this semester, we'll boldly explore the episodes before us, not only as entertainment, but as case studies. We'll analyze command decisions, ethical dilemmas, and perhaps even the occasional warp core breach in narrative logic. This week, we'll be analyzing the first 2 outings from Star Trek Starfleet. So lower shields and prepare to engage as we beam up opinions on episodes 1 and 2 of season 1. Joining me today are a group of experienced fellow instructors. Let's introduce ourselves. Dan?
Hi, I'm Dan Lackey, editor of warpfactortrack.com, and set up this podcast, and thank you for joining us.
Hi, I'm Michelle Wine. Michelle, I'm live in the same city as Dan, and I've been a fan for decades, and was recruited by Dan to review a novel by Greg Cox not that long ago.
Thanks. I'm Victoria, and I'm the host of Star Trek Sundays on Clubhouse, and that is a look at philosophy through the lens of Star Trek. Philosophy?
We're Philosophy. We run a whole bunch of channels, but the one that actually covers Star Trek is over on Philosophy Explores. And as it says in our little thingy down below, writer, historian, farmer, we do all sorts of content. And Dan has been nice enough to invite us in to review the most recent episodes of Starfleet Academy. Yep, excited to be here. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Phyllis, and I was a writer on Star Trek Voyager and Enterprise, and I've been a fan as long as Michelle, and I'm looking forward to dissecting what we've seen.
Hey everyone, I'm Eve up here in Alberta. I actually am a director of a college in a real life Starfleet Academy. And I've probably been a Trekkie since I was a teenager, and I've worked with Dan a lot in the past on podcasts or doing some writing for warpfactortrek.com. So I'm looking forward to picking at a show that hasn't yet hit its final frontier.
Excellent. Dan, did you have anything to say?
No.
Well, before we get started, I do have questions that we'll get started and we'll open up the Academy. But we have all met just briefly before we went live, and we have varying opinions on these first 2 episodes. So if you're listening to this on the live, or if you're listening to it later on, just know that we represent a lot of different opinions. And if you loved the show, great. If you had some problems with it, stay tuned. We'll probably be mentioning those. So without further ado, let me just get these questions. Okay. Class is now in session. Welcome to the Academy. Let me commence the semester by asking, what are your general thoughts about these episodes? Do we want to go in order, or?
That might be easiest because then we don't talk over each other.
Sure. Dan, what are your thoughts on these episodes?
I really enjoyed them. I think in general, I was a bit anxious before seeing the show, to see what direction it might take and stuff like that. I do have some issues with the first 3 episodes that I've noted down. But yeah, I enjoyed, especially the humor, I think, in the first episode, I'd say. I find them interesting, yeah.
How about you, Michelle?
Right, well, I was watching this from the viewpoint of someone who has not even seen Discovery yet. So I felt that I needed to watch Discovery to get a handle on characters like Admiral Vance and Jet Reno.
Right. Yeah.
But otherwise, like Dan, I enjoyed the humour, and I thought Gina Yashiri stole the show.
Great. Yeah, I too, I'll admit, I haven't seen much of Discovery. Dan was smart enough to tell me to watch the first 3 episodes of season 3. So I did that before watching these, and they do give a great help. So yeah, I recommend you go back and do that. How about you, Philosophy?
So we came into these 2 episodes with a lot of trepidation because the trailers were not exactly flattering with what we were going to be seeing, and also they kind of teased it, not to big spoilers or anything. They kind of teased that this was going to be the Tilly show for like 3 seasons in Discovery, and then at the last moment they revealed that Tilly is not going to be a main figure of this show. So we went in we're like, but then Dan came in and asked us, and we were like, oh, yeah, okay, check it out, and we were pleasantly surprised. We have problems, of course, but by and large, it was a very immersive experience. It was very pleasant. It was really fun. A lot of good humor, as Dan said.
I also entered with some trepidation about how they were going to pull this off, especially in the 32nd century. But I found that I actually enjoyed the second episode a lot more than the first, which makes sense because there was so much setup in the first, and I found everybody an archetype in the first, and it started to flesh out in the second. So I'd say the jury's still out, but I was pleasantly surprised.
For me, going in, I mean, I always go in with the idea that I'm going to like it anyway. Not because because I like everything, but no, I just always go in with the idea that I'm going to like it because I don't want to go in with an idea of, oh, I'm not going to like this or whatever, because I feel like that would be more likely to color my view of it when I see things I don't like. But initially from the trailers, I have to agree the trailers did not do a very good job representing the show. My boyfriend and I, we were talking back and forth, and one of the comments we made seeing the trailers was, is this going to be Star Trek 90210?
210.
Or, Star Trek
Right.
Saved by the Red Alert? Like, is that what we're going to be looking at? Like, please don't be like one of the shows on the CW that, tries to appeal to adults, but is really more like young adult
A family
content.
show.
Yeah, like not just a family show, but that niche of, like, for the writers in the group, that niche of books, young adult books and young adult TV. Like, I was a little worried it was going to be that, but I like to see that there's a little more meat and potatoes to it than that, because I would probably tune out within a couple of episodes if it was that. And I also like that they didn't try to skin something with Star Trek for a show, because that was my other concern after seeing Prodigy, and Dan knows this. One of my biggest rants about Prodigy was that it looked like a Star Trek skin over Star Trek Clone Wars or Star Trek Rebels. That's what it looked like to me, and I was a little worried about that. So I was surprised we didn't have that. The trailers really did not represent, but sometimes that happens. I did like to see some of the more interesting species in the background, and I'm kind of hoping a couple of them require explanations, but I'm kind of hoping we get to see some of these other species a little more now that we have the ability to depict them on screen. So overall, I quite liked it. It's solid. Like I think Phyllis said, they were archetypes, which is very obvious from the get-go. I mean, we have, sad backstory of damaged character. We have, one who's probably going to be the activist. We've got certain categories, I guess, that they all fit. But I think overall, so far, it's a good start.
Great. Well, I was I would continue watching even if I weren't participating in this. But overall, I was disappointed. And that is because I go to Star Trek for some deep thinking, and I wasn't getting any deep thinking. I did find that the archetypes to me were a bit eye rolling in that, I think we can like them. And I was trying to give it some charity in that we have to be introduced to all these people right away. So how else would we do that? I'm trying to figure that out. If we can't, they just have to be shown to us or told to us, because a lot of it was telling. But I do think, and this is I had a bit of a problem with Discovery as well, on occasion. I haven't seen many episodes of it, that if everybody is special, then nobody is special. And so everybody, isn't everybody cute and quirky and they all have their thing? And you guys might kick me out of the stream for this, but I really do not like Jet. Right? Like, I don't think, for the Starfleet that I know, and I'm, I guess, old school, and I'm watching with my group, we're watching Deep Space Nine every Saturday morning together and finding philosophical topics to talk about. I really felt that Jet shouldn't be in Starfleet or have any authority because she's an asshole. So that rubbed me the wrong way in Discovery, particularly the 3 episodes that I watched before this, and then to see her talking to the students like that. And it's clear that the students, I'll just land here. It's clear that the students have not been vetted as well as they used to be. And that may be that we've got the burn and not many people want to join Starfleet. So the bar has been lowered. But we've watched people try to get into Starfleet. We've watched people not get into Starfleet. And a lot of these really emotionally immature young adults would not make the Starfleet of the next generation. So
they do at least mention that explicitly in episode 2. They outright bring that up, like the guy is like, hey, didn't all of these guys not have to go through the usual vetting? And they're like, yeah, but we have excuses for that.
Right, but it was only that one guy that didn't have
Yeah,
to go through the vetting. But I'm thinking, okay, so how, I mean, we'll get into it deeper, but how did some of these people actually get through the vetting? If it's a 6-week vetting, anyway, there's lots of details, and I don't want to get bogged down in the details. But that was my overall take. Was I don't think, and again, just overall, because some of these questions we have are details. When the music would swell and we were supposed to feel something, there was nothing earned. Like, I didn't care at that point. And so it felt like it was like, oh, by the way, here's a quote that you should recognize. Here's somebody's name on the wall that you should recognize that should make you feel something, but it didn't make you feel anything. Right. And
it seemed like fan service instead of
yeah, but
story.
we're fans. I know, but it seemed like fan service to people who don't watch Star Trek for Gene's input, right? Like, I'm there because I want my mind to be challenged with ideas. I want you to talk about a situation and have it work out. Like, all the kids who didn't like each other, who had to get together and work together. Well, there was really nothing on the line. I mean, sure, there was a life, but it wasn't like, I don't know. There was just something missing. And I've been sitting with it for a few days. So maybe we'll figure it out and maybe they'll fix it. Right. Like, I do want to say, like, I remember it was the first or second episode of TNG, and you could see the carpet peeling up under Data's console. Right. So like, I mean, they'll fix some things. Right. But that's my overall take so far.
The vetting thing, you brought it up and it made me think a lot of people were questioning too 7 of 9 in Picard as having gone through command at the Academy so quickly. And I think it is definitely tied to the burn, because they pushed 7 of 9 and others through, like Captain Shaw, because of Wolf 359 and the fleet being decimated. So I think it actually makes sense that I just want to say that I think it makes sense that these ones would not be as vetted.
Right. Well, I get that. I also think, like, if I was living in that era and I was like a 422-year-old person or something, and I was able to look back before, I'm just going to say it. There's no one other than I can't remember the gentleman's name who started the discussions. Who's
I
the
think that was the
Admiral?
head of the War College, right?
Yeah, the Admiral, right?
Admiral Vance.
Vance.
Admiral
Yes.
Vance is
Admiral
our favorite character in the entire 32nd century. He is
Yeah.
Yes.
the best.
So other than him, nobody set the standard. Like, I was appalled at Nala. Appalled. You can't tell somebody that you got to get a Starfleet haircut when your hair is a mess. You can't be walking around in bare feet. I mean, there's so many reasons why that's wrong. I get that she's supposed to be this old wise yoga thing or something, but there was so much I was like, oh my God. She, like, I get that you want to be this touchy-feely person in charge of the school and that you need that, but it was just shoved down my throat. I felt like it was World Cup in Vancouver or something, and I was just getting soccer balls kicked at my head, right? So anyway, I had a problem with Nala's character overall because it just, like, wear bare feet in your house. Like, let's show us that, you know, you're easygoing and stuff like that. But I found her to be somewhat disrespectful. So
Just a thought, because I do see your point. I know you've mentioned to us behind the scenes that some Star Treks you've seen more of than others. For those who have seen most of Star Trek, Strange New Worlds, Pelia is the same species, Lanthanite, and if you haven't seen those episodes, Victoria, in Strange New Worlds that feature Pelia, I would definitely say watch them, because that's the way she behaves is definitely fitting to the species.
It's definitely a cultural aspect. It's 100% like their thing, obviously.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the character, but the fact that now she's going to be setting it just, there was nobody that set the tone, and then to have the Jem'Hadar woman, why isn't she in the War College? Like, there was just nobody to set the norm to make the kids look special and unique, right? Everybody was just so special and unique. So anyway, I'll leave it there, because we've got lots of questions. I see some questions in the chat. The Betazoids, yeah. That's interesting. Okay, well, maybe I'll get to some of these questions that Dan has wanted us to ask, and then we'll get to those the Betazoid ones. So we'll go back to Dan. Dan, do you have any favorite scene or a line of dialogue from the episode that stands out for you?
Well, personally, I really like when characters are introduced as main characters in animated shows and then shown in live action, which happens once in these two episodes with there was a Bricar. That's a species that was introduced, I believe, first by Peter David in one of the novels. It was apparently one of the Starfleet Academy TNG era novels. With remember reading as a kid, I think, with Worf in it, and went on to appear in the animated series Prodigy, and now appears in Starfleet Academy. I keep wishing that we'll finally see in the Dosian that would be like addicts from the 1970s animated Star Trek series, the first animated Star Trek series, and I think this hopefully paves the way to that. Perhaps you'd see his species finally appear in live action Star Trek.
Great. How about you, Michelle? Any favorite line or scene?
Well, to be perfectly honest, I haven't really gotten a memory of any particular line, but I did think that the cadet master was actually quite funny, and just especially when she's operated on, and she basically says, she doesn't want any cheerfulness in our final moments. And you see online there's been a lot of debate on, why is there a Jem'Hadar woman? It's like, well, a lot of time has passed between the Dominion War and the 32nd century. Odo's been there for a while, so he's probably had a massive influence that's probably allowed her father to go and date a Klingon woman.
I think that was sort of explained, though, wasn't it? I thought that they made it clear that she wasn't full Jem'Hadar.
Yeah,
that she
yeah,
was-
Well,
she's-
yeah,
yeah,
her
she's
father
Klingon.
was a Jem'Hadar and her
Here.
mother was a Klingon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, mother.
I
Klingon
kind of
mother,
felt like
Jem'Hadar
every
father.
alien was a Klingon mix.
There was a Klingerite. They mentioned
Klingerite,
a Klingerite
exactly.
in
Tellerite.
there, and we're like, a Klingerite? That guy would be built like a brick. Good luck fighting him. It's like punching a lead ball.
Because the idea behind that character is it's like half Klingon and half Tellarite. But watching the scene, I was like, well, you don't get like Spock referring to himself as like a Volkman, or
Yeah.
A Volkman, right? Yeah.
I would say that
Weird.
oh, now I can't talk. I would say the calling it a Klingerite to me does make sense that they would call themselves that because of the Tellarite contrary behavior, because Tellarites are contrarians. They love to argue. So to me, a Klingerite would be somebody who's built like a tank, you know. You definitely don't want to be on the receiving end of a punch they throw, but is constantly arguing with everyone, including themselves.
Which he was in
Yeah.
the scenes.
Yeah.
It really made sense. Yeah. Yeah, we actually that was one thing that we were really, really drawn to actually on it. So we watch a lot of Isaac Arthur, and he's really all about science and futurism. And one of the things he has is if you have sufficient enough technology, crossbreeding is not a possibility, it's a probability. And it seems like in this era of Trek, in the 32nd century, they're focusing a lot more on Romulo-Vulcans, on hybrid. We appear to be entering the hybrid era of Star Trek, and we really thought that was interesting. Some of them, like Laura, they're gonna have to explain it on screen. We have too many questions. It doesn't work out. As we recall, the Jem'Hadar lay eggs, so we're not even working with the same reproductive system here. They're gonna have to explain that later, but despite ourselves, we approve of where they're going with the kind of hybridization. They've been teasing at that, in canon for 900 years now. So,
Well,
that's
that
certainly something.
since you've got the mic, Philosophy, do you have a favorite scene or line of dialogue from these episodes you want to share?
Oh man, so we've been actually thinking about that. There are just so many of them. We really like the nothing like dying to get the blood pumping scene where she punches Bro across the room with a congratulatory ha and also we think we know, Victoria, you didn't like Nala, but Nala is as soon as we heard her voice, we knew what actress it was, and we're like, yay! And then from there, she throws herself into the chair sideways. She walks around with her feet bare and everything. She understands Starfleet protocol, but she also has the experience and wisdom to know when to shirk it and how to argue and so on. We thought that every scene that she was in was amazing. She really killed the role, we felt. And okay, so this kind of actually does go back into what you were saying, Victoria. Everybody's so special and everything, but we did it. That's not the feel we get from Nala. Nala is not she may be 422 years old, but that does not make her special. That makes her casual. She understands from experience when to get excited and when to just kind of relax and sit down in her chair in an objectively incorrect position and then read a book in front of her entire crew to lower tension. We think that's good. And more than that, we would kill for more shows with 50-year-olds who aren't terribly impressive putting together a crew of people who are all geniuses. We would like a lot more of that to bring reality back to the action. Sorry to take the mic there.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, and I'm glad to be here and hear these perspectives because the more I learn about her species, the more things won't seem so at odds with me. Now, I will say, this is the beginning of a new series and there is going to be growing pains. And one of the things that I would like the writers to do is it's basic writing. I mean, a lot of you guys are writers here. It's the show don't tell, but at least if you're gonna tell us, have something that is consistent with it. So when she said, I realize I'm a traditionalist, well, she could have tied her hair back or brushed her hair or showed something, one little tiny thing that made what she did earlier seem different, like that she came realizing I'm a traditionalist. Show us that you're a traditionalist, right? So so these are little things that can be tweaked, but I think that these are basic writing mistakes. And look, I love Holly Hunter, right? I think she's great. But it was more just what the characters were given and how their actions were not consistent with their dialogue, and that is not the actor's fault at all. So, like,
you know, I find that interesting because in that particular time when she was saying I'm a traditionalist, it was all a setup to basically talk about moving Starfleet headquarters from Paris to Beta Z. And I found that it was I don't find her a traditionalist, and I think it was just a negotiating sort of talk.
It was clearly politics is what she was going for.
But in terms, I guess I'm up for in terms of my favorite scenes, and I really liked the second episode a lot more than the first because I felt like it was a really strong story between Beta Z and I forgot the name, Talmia or
Tarima,
the daughter. And is it Caleb? Caleb, yeah. And I liked their scenes together, and I thought that worked well as sort of they're awkward, they're young, they're idealistic in their own ways, and I felt a little bit charmed by it. So I'll go more towards there. Whereas in the first episode, it was very pro forma, like someone said, get a bunch of people who don't like each other and stick them in a challenging situation and see what happens. So that's my take.
Thanks, Phyllis. How about you, Eve? Do you have a favorite scene or line of dialogue from the episodes?
I have a couple. First, though, I will say our captain there, Nala, I liked her in that out of all the ones I saw in the trailer, out of all the hybrids or human-looking ones in the trailer, and my boyfriend will attest this, I was right away, I'm like, she's got to be Lanthanite. Like, I just got that from the trailer. So for me, that was a big thing because all the other hybrid species, some you can tell that obviously that's a hybrid, others you can't because they just look like humans. So right away I was like, oh yeah, that's totally like she's Lanthanite. I have to say I'm very glad to see our Dadmiral Vance back. I like his very proper. I like the scenes he does with Nala because he's very proper to her more almost irreverent Lanthanite behavior, where he's more formal, he's put together, he's more proper. I like the contrast there. But favorite scenes, I get really oddly specific. For those who have seen a certain scene in Discovery that features our Admiral Vance and a certain Orion, the fire fruit scene, that right away I was like, they did that fire fruit scene strictly as a callback to the scene in Discovery where Vance gives the apple to the Orion, I forget her name, and then he tells her that it's literally made of, excuse my language, shit, because that's the word he uses.
Well, it's not bad for shit, and it doesn't
Yeah.
take, war crimes to make. As he says, that is our favorite line Vance does in the entire Discovery series. It sets him up every time he's on camera. It's just power move after power move.
Yeah, and so for me, the fire fruit thing, that was like, a callback to that, but at the same time trying to show sort of, where these Caleb and Nala stand with each other, like, that she's not afraid to put him in his place a few times. But, so for me, that was my favorite scene. My other favorite scene was the opera scene, and Dan knows as we go through this, now that we've got the College of Opera, and Dan knows, I have nitpicked every musical thing in Star Trek because career-wise, I am a musician, so I can't help it. And my first reaction is, please let's not ruin any opera, because in Voyager, there's one really huge mistake referencing opera. But I did like it because the actress who's playing across from the Doctor, her voice, I could have sat there and listened to her all night. Like, I'm sorry, I could have. Whoever she is, she's got one heck of a set of pipes there. Like, it was nice.
Absolutely. Well, this is great because it leads right into our next specific question, which is, who is your favorite character in these episodes and why? And do you have a favorite character introduction? How about back to you, Dan?
So a couple of things I'd like to say. Like, I don't think I'll be able to watch this series without thinking of the Lion King because of the name Nala. And some people have said, like, how come they are questioning why they could have, like, they're thinking they could have, like, reused, like, the species Elorian for Nala's species, because it's another long-lived, sort of wise species. So are questioning, well, that may have been to do with perhaps copyright or something like that. I also, with Nala, the way that she sits, I thought it was cool. There's a podcast on YouTube called Crusher Convo that's pointed out, like, the way that she sits is very similar to how Beverly Crusher sometimes sits on The Next Generation. I thought that was a cool observation. And about the apple, like, that really, like, I thought that was cool because that has touchbacks to a lot of the Academy for me. Like, Kirk is eating an apple in Star Trek II that I can when you talk about having been at the Academy. Kirk in the Kelvin timeline is eating an apple when he's actually taking the Kobayashi Maru that in Star Trek 2009 that Kirk talks about in the Wrath of Khan. So there's quite a lot of linkage between apples and Starfleet Academy. But to answer the question, finally, I would say probably the Jamadar Klingon woman, because I find her really funny.
Number one.
Right, yeah. Well, was there any introduction that you particularly liked, Dan?
Well, I would say the reintroduction of the Doctor, I thought was cool. That scene where he's like, tricorder, medical tricorder, because it references the caretaker to the first episode of Voyager.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. I don't think I have to repeat the questions or anything, but over to you, Michelle. What about you? What's a favorite character and or character introduction?
At the moment, I feel as if I need time to get to know most of the characters before I can actually judge who my favourite is. But I'll go with Dan. That I did get the reference when the Doctor comes in from the caretaker, because I did watch Voyager. And my review is, when I watched him, is he hasn't changed much from Voyager. Still the same old Doctor.
Yeah, it was good to see him again for sure. How about you, Philosophy? Favorite character or character introduction?
So with ours, it's separate. Our favorite character, despite ourselves, because we didn't want to like her coming, is Laura Thok. It is the half Jem'Hadar lady. Number one, she is funny. She is to the point when she's on screen. When she has been violent, she has been unmercifully violent on accident, which we find perfectly fitting. And we think it's great that in DS9, we already saw the Jem'Hadar obsession with Klingons. They already liked Klingons a lot. They were already obsessed with them. So it's only reasonable that if any species out there would hybridize with the Jem'Hadar, it'd be a Klingon. And we like there's a scene where she's like, my father taught me that victory is life. My mother taught me that today is a good day to die. And we're over here like, my God, those two cultural ethos just go together like peanut butter and chocolate. This is a great character from the ground up. We want to know more. We want to see more. They better explain what the hell is going on with her whole genetic situation this season. But we think if they get that out there, she's a character that we can get really attached to really fast. In stark contrast, our favorite introduction is to our least favorite character right now, and that's Genesis. And we saw Genesis by her accepting somebody's friendship as an object to be dealt for, to be negotiated and bartered over. And then when she found out that the friendship didn't have a price on it, she accepted it as a free token and just took it without question. And then literally every scene we see of her afterward is some kind of negotiation, some kind of social manipulation tactic. We don't know who she is. Did they mention her species at all? Yeah, we don't know who she is. We don't know what her culture is. It is easily one of the most on the hook introductions. Now we want to know who is this Ferengi looking girl or this Ferengi acting girl? What's up with her? Where is it going here? And why is she so manipulative? So we don't really like Genesis as a character because we're not a huge fan of like overtly manipulative people who see the world as purely transactional. But the introduction was a very good show don't tell thing. We don't know anything about her, but we know that her, or maybe even her species, is extremely value and profit oriented. So that's very curious. We want to know more. So yeah, sorry to steal the song, you know.
That's great. Yeah, how about you, fellas? Favorite character?
Well, I'm sitting here going, I didn't see that about Genesis per se, but now that I think about her and her basically being able to blackmail Caleb and deciding not to or whatever it is,
it's
that
every
tracks
scene
perfectly.
Yeah, it's every scene.
Yeah, and I don't have a favorite yet. And when I think of favorites, I actually think in two ways: who's my favorite older character and who's my favorite cadet. And I have obviously an affection for, an affinity for the Doctor, and I think that Robert Picardo is a great actor and somebody who can do the opera thing without being a total parody of someone who loves opera and has no idea how to do it. And the jury's really out on the cadets again, because I don't see them as people yet. More devices, and I'm just letting that settle. But in terms of an introduction, actually, it wasn't an introduction, but I really liked the bit of a scene where Caleb was protesting that there was absolutely no way he was going into Starfleet Academy and going to wear a uniform and do any of this. And then the Doctor ushers him through the force field and boom, there he is. And I'm like, that is a great way to just deal with that quickly and visually and get him to be fish out of water, but a chance that he actually can fit in.
Yeah, I liked that too. Yeah.
Has anyone here ever seen the movie Drumline?
I haven't.
So in Drumline, it's about a kid who's on the marching band or whatever in a college. But in the movie Drumline, everybody is given this huge manual at the beginning of the movie, and we see 2 scenes later, so it's not a big spoiler or anything. What is the final rule in this book? And the final rule in this book is, if you do not know this rule, your head will be shaved. and we very much got similar. I'm not going to wear a regulation haircut. All right, that's fine. I'm not going to wear a uniform. Okay, yeah, sure. All right, go ahead. You know, blah, blah. No, you are going to. Like, if you didn't read that part of the regulation, I don't know what to tell you. So very much had the same kind of vibes from that.
Great. How about you, Eve? Favorite character introduction?
I would have to say our cadet master, like, number one. I love her. She's, like it's been mentioned, she's funny. Again, if there's 2 species that would interbreed, it's a Klingon and a Jem'Hadar would totally work together. I like that she's witty and she's sharp, but she's also got this total like FAFO energy. Like, I like, I like the part where she's like, that's yes, cadet master. It's like, okay, excuse us, lady. Like, she's not going to take anything for anyone. And her personality to me reminds me of one of my other favorite Klingon hybrids, which is Kalar from Next Generation. She's got the Klingon. She's got all the Klingon attributes. She's got all the Jem'Hadar attributes, but it's almost like they're tempered by each other a little bit, because we do know Klingons have a sense of humor. Klingons like to laugh. Klingons have these very ebullient personalities. So to me, she's just perfect the way, like, as she is. Her intro is perfect. The way she carries herself, it's perfect. And she totally reminds me of Kalar. Like, really reminds me of Kalar. If it was one of the younger characters, I would almost say, I can't remember her name, but our holographic character.
Sam.
Yeah.
Sam.
Yeah, the one with the buns on her head. Yeah, I like her because I like how she's so like wide-eyed and like everything's new to her. I'm a big Fallout fan, so she kind of reminds me of Lucy coming out of the vault for the first time in a way. That, that huge wide-eyed, like, there's this whole other world out here. So she's one that I'm hoping is not going to be underused in the series, because there's a lot of potential there with her, I think.
She very much fits the "I was born yesterday" trope.
Yeah,
and we
4 months ago.
Yeah,
she's a baby.
Yeah, I think that was covered in the show, though. I think they.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
she's
great.
programmed to be 17, but she was only activated like 4 months ago or
4
something.
months ago, yeah.
Right.
So she's just a little baby hologram right now, and everybody else is very much ahead of her. She doesn't even know. We love how her hobbies include interacting with people and doing things that 17-year-olds like to do.
And she's reading from a playbook. Like, she's got
we called her for a synthetic, like, literally from scene 1. We're all like, she's not real. Like, she's real, but she's not one of us. And sure enough.
Yeah, I think initially my boyfriend thought she might be an android, and he said either way going forward, she's going to become the Data of the show, probably.
Yeah, we thought that she was one of the synthetic species from Picard when we first saw her.
But yeah, I like that she's even reading it from a playbook. Like, I like this. I am this.
I like interacting with people.
Great. Well, before we got started, I think we talked a little bit about this. So the next topic is costumes. Dan, do you have any thoughts about the costumes in this episode?
Yeah, I love how I don't think I was trying to remember whether it's been established in Star Trek before. I don't think it has. But like like all the cadets have color like in the uniforms apart from like Caleb's got grey, and I wondered like what is the idea behind that, and it's like undecided or you know. So I
Undeclared.
thought
Undeclared,
yeah,
yeah.
undeclared. I thought that was a really cool concept. And I thought it was maybe a bit similar. It reminded me of Wesley Crusher having had grey in his like sort of outfit before he entered Starfleet Academy.
Fortunately, in the last 800 years, they've gotten a much better fashion sense. It seems. Fortunately.
Star Trek in the 80s and 90s was the epitome of my parents dress me funny.
It was bad.
How about you, Michelle? Any thoughts on the costumes?
To be perfectly honest, I was actually paying more attention to the story than the costumes. So
Yeah, I didn't.
I
Nothing
think Caleb
stood out with
stood
me.
out because he hadn't decided on what his discipline was going to be.
Yeah, I didn't catch that, so I'm glad that's been brought up. Yeah. How about you, Philosophy? What do you think about the costumes?
So can we include the prosthetics in the costuming? Because the actual outfits themselves didn't stick out at all. They seemed so bog standard that we almost forgot they were there. So which we mean is good in a Starfleet setting. You want everything to kind of be a little bland and a little uniform, and you're trying to get these kids to all be a single unified force here, so you have a central unit identity and unit cohesion going on. But we were very impressed by the prosthetics. There's this lady who's got the really rocky, craggy looking face thing in the main bridge crew. And every time she talks, she's got, a double weird warble voice or whatever. And every time she was on screen, we were like, okay, we don't care about the outfits here, but what is that? Like we saw some really, really good prosthetics going on the entire time. All in a weird way, we were extremely disappointed when the Keonian guy shifted and became Mystique in the background. Even with like the weird flesh shifting thing that they did in the original movie. And we were just over here like, we were really hoping that he would just human walk his way out into space. We think that would have been like way cooler. And we think that his prosthetics were probably the least impressive of all of them, because he just looked like Mystique from the original, X-Men or whatever. X-Men. But other than that, like, we gotta say, we really loved all of the prosthetics. Lura had great prosthetics. That lady on the bridge had great prosthetics. They got some new forehead ridges going on with people. The Klingon was great, classic Next Generation feel, with a little bit of the extra like ridges along his face that we haven't seen on Klingons before. So we're wondering if that's just like a new breed or if that's like a hybrid effect or whatever, because we've been talking about that already. So we'll see. Hopefully, we like the prosthetics a lot more than we like the outfits. We'll say that.
Great. Yeah. I agree with the human to lizard transition. That was a little took me out of the story.
It really broke immersion for us on that one. We're just like, okay, what's going on here?
The other thing that confused me was why he had her turn around. It's supposed to be embarrassing or something like that.
Well, he was like, "Oh, I don't want you to fall in love with me," but then we see him change as she turns around right there on camera. Again, it just looks like Mystique from the Hugh Jackman X-Men movie or whatever. It's not like fancy. We expected him to like glow. That honestly, we expected him to become like a miniature supernova or whatever, and he didn't, and it was really anticlimactic.
That may get explained later on, though, because that could be a cultural thing for them, that
maybe
they don't want outsiders to see the transformation happen.
Well, I thought that whole sequence was interesting because it was, to me, it seemed like on several levels it was a callback to, like when Nus Bracca is coming. It seems like such a on several levels call back to the Calvin Timeline films. Because first of all, like the ship coming together, that's like beyond. Secondly, the whole sequence of turn around, that's from Star Trek Into Darkness, and then there's something else which happens, but it's the idea of the escape pod separating from the ship. That reminded me of Beyond as well. So quite a few elements there reminded me of the Calvin Timeline films.
In terms of the costumes, I'm sort of with Philosophy that I was not really paying attention to them, and honestly, that I was much more focused on faces, prosthetics. How do I distinguish between these characters and what the hell species is Gemini? So, but I wasn't blown away by anything. It seemed like they weren't yet taking advantage of any sort of order or individualism or things like that. Somehow for me, the original series uniforms were just iconic, and they fit with the characters and kind of buoyed them while we watched them, and I just didn't get the same feeling here. I completely missed the gray being undeclared, so I'm impressed with that. So, but I will agree the prosthetics have come so far, as well as the CGI for the Benjamin Grimm character, whoever that rock.
He was in
combo.
Prodigy, that species.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
Rock Talk.
I
Rock
didn't
Talk
know
was
that.
one of the main characters was one of those species, and that was actually a big thing because they had been a beta thing the entire time. It's always good to see when beta goes to alpha. You know.
Yeah.
That's what I was talking about earlier. A little bit of car.
Thanks, Phyllis. How about you, Lieutenant Commander Eve? What do you think about the costumes?
The prosthetics, definitely. I mean, we see that one in one of the panning shots. There's that one Ferengi who looks absolutely magnificent. The Ferengi female there, like she, you can definitely tell there's more effort than let's just put some giant rubber ears and a squishy forehead on. You know, like her prosthetics were like fantastic, as well as that one other female species where we're like, what the heck species is that? You know, she's got kind of a craggy face.
Yeah.
The uniforms themselves, I do not like the fact that we've got about 3 or 4 different uniforms walking around in the show. To me, it kind of ruins the cohesion. I've always had a problem with the asymmetric hemline thing, as Dan knows. It just bothers me. I don't really know why they made that decision, but it just really bothers me because Starfleet, at the end of the day, is military based, so you would not see something like that. You got the cadets in the sort of, do you want fries with that McDonald's special uniform happening there? Because the McDonald's uniforms do look like that in some places, like here they do. And that's what it makes me think of. But there was a few details I liked. One being like the dark black, gray or black stripe being undeclared. And me being the Star Trek conspiracy theorist I am, and Dan's going to either roll his eyes or he's going to laugh because he knows exactly what I'm thinking. Black. Section 31 maybe down the road. He's got the background for it. Just saying.
We think with the War College they've kind of pushed that to the side because the War College is all black themed. So,
yeah.
But
Dan knows I'm big on the Section 31 thing, and I called Section 31 and the Mirror Universe in Discovery before they even showed up, just because just picking up on things. So I'm just putting it out there. I could be completely way out to left field, but that's why I said Dan knows me. He knows I would say it. The other thing is on number 1's uniform. If you notice, she had a wide sort of collar thing happening. Mm-hmm. And if you look closely, it looked like it had like a Klingon sort of pattern to it. So to me, that reminded me a lot of how Worf got to wear his big baldric thing in TNG. Like that was a really neat detail. And I'm wondering if that's going to be sort of explained later, like why she's allowed that specific thing in her uniform that nobody else is allowed. And then my only other issue with the uniforms, which I brought up behind the scenes, is we've gone back to very gendered uniforms. The female characters, especially cadets, are wearing skirts and skants. The men are wearing pants and a jacket type deal here. And, you know, sure, in the original series, totally made sense. It was the 60s. Next Generation, at least in the Next Generation, we had a guy in a scant in the background, you know? Or like Worf commenting his dress uniform he thinks his dress uniform is wearing a dress, you know?
And that
we
was
lost
such a
that.
thing.
But I think we're going back. Sorry, what I was going to say is I think we're going backwards in terms of the uniforms, because through DS9, through Voyager, even in Enterprise, the uniforms were more unisex. So
Yes,
I'm kind of wondering why.
Except for T'Pol.
Yeah, except for yeah.
For obvious
they've always
reasons.
they've always got to have
Or-
that.
Yeah. Or 7 of 9, you know.
This is Star Trek after all. We need to have
Yes.
one character.
Yeah.
I find it interesting that it was such a thing in the pre-launch, I guess, you know, before the series debuted, that Crag the Klingon would be wearing a scant, and then he barely does.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think the uniform styling's gone backwards in that sense. Like, why do we have to go back to the female or female appearing aliens? Because we know aliens may have other genders, but, you know, why do they have to wear what would be typically considered a woman's uniform here on Earth? You know, why do we have to have that? Why don't we have more of the neutral sort of looking uniforms? Because to me, that would make more sense, but I'd like to know why we're going backwards.
If I were to look at the history of these things, it might be the way of the world, because when we get, they have said that this happens when we get closer to fascism. Throwing it out there. So, I mean, it's something to look into, right? Well, let's move on to the visuals. Dan, how effective are the episode's visuals so far?
Well, I guess we've spoken about this to some extent, but yeah, I really liked the cinematography as well as the visual effects. I thought they were really cool. But I think they work a lot better, like watching the episode, or, you know, when it's playing scenes and stuff like that, rather than like stills, photographs, or whatever, you know, because there's so much on the screen at a time that you can make stuff out more. You can just, you know, determine what stuff is when the episode is playing, but it's really difficult, I think, when, you know, seeing the, you know, the still images.
Right. Okay. And how about you, Michelle? What do you think of the visuals so far?
I think the first thing that struck me was just how far CGI has come in the last 30 years. And it's used more now than it was in the 90s, when it was just in its infancy. And so it's used to generate the ships, the space scenes, etc. One thing that I was really intrigued about was that wall in the background with all the lists of names. I only got one or two, and I would love to see a transcript of the entire list.
Yeah, I wonder how many insider
exactly
names
whose names are on that wall.
Yeah, I think we'll see more, you know, going on.
Yeah.
I mean, that was part of them.
I felt that a lot of the time it was all blurred out. I only caught maybe one or two, like Demora Sulu. But other than that, I didn't catch anybody else. I would love to know the entire
list. You're muted right now if you don't know.
Yeah, Eve looks like she's talking, but she's muted.
Sorry. I was going to say with the wall, Nog's name was front and center when they first came in on it.
Oh.
Nog's name, Lieutenant Nog.
We love that he has got a name drop.
I'm a huge DS9 fan.
Yeah,
he has gotten a name drop in every future moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
can't hear any of you if you all talk at the same time. Let's stick with Michelle for a minute. What did you say about DS9, Michelle?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of DS9, so I'm absolutely gutted that I did not notice Nog's name there. It was Demora Sulu that jumped right out at me first.
And Harry
I have
Kim,
no idea why.
apparently Harry Kim is made an admiral.
Yes.
Established in canon by the Wall, but apparently he was made an admiral also in Star Trek Online prior to the Starfleet Academy.
Oh,
About
that's
time he
nice.
moves past ensign.
Yeah.
How about you,
Oh, poor
Felicity?
Harry Kim must have got promoted at some point.
Yeah, we'll have to maybe they'll do some throwbacks and tell us about these things when people ask about the people on the wall or something, right? So Philosophy, what did you think of the visuals?
So as far as visuals in Star Trek go, we're really pedestrian. All we care about with the visuals are the fight scenes, the ships, and how does space look. The fight scenes were pretty good. We want to see more of them. We like the look of the guns and stuff like that. We don't think we really saw any active pew-pewing between each other, so we're gonna reserve our judgment on how like the actual effects of the weapons going back and forth look like. But we will say probably one of our new favorite ship designs. The Starfleet Academy ship, they always have that, the fly around thing where they, when they introduce a new ship. And when we saw it, we were like, ooh, how big is that thing? It looks shiny and nice and good. And we love the ring thing because the crossfield was when the crossfield came out, Discovery first started, we were like, that ship is sleek as hell. We want like 5 of them. And this has all of the same kind of feelings. It's got that internal lateral ring going on. It's got that long, swept kind of nacelle type configuration going on. And we like that it's not 2 nacelles. It's like 6 nacelles, and they're all kind of, slanted into each other like a plane aileron or what have you. And we think that's really sleek. And space. Just like what was being said earlier about the CGI in the last 30 years since we were a kid, when we were a kid in TNG, it was kind of just like a static background that the model was moving through, and now it's like really pretty, actual, hyper realistic looking stuff. We saw some actual like real places in space, as they were flashing through some pictures and stuff. We saw like the Pillars of Creation at one point, we think. So that was good. That was good. It really did it. And the theme. We'll accept the intro as a Star Trek theme. We will accept it as a Star Trek theme. It's not bad. It's just not what we were expecting. It fits the theme of the show, though, because most Star Trek, we're seeing the ship go through various different locales, but in this one we're seeing a tree growing and buildings being built and things like that, and that makes sense for Starfleet Academy, so we can dig
it. I was impressed with the CGI, and I think they put a lot of money into the backgrounds and into those visuals, so I would expect that a good phaser fight, or whatever we're going to call them, is going to be excellent. For me, I guess I'm much more of a character-driven, story-driven watcher. So it was nice, but the visuals... Actually, I want to build on one thing that Philosophy said, which is everything being shiny and new. The Academy itself, especially that whatever set or place they're at that has the long glass enclosed staircase going down to the pavilion, where she even says, the Beta Z says, it's also new and shiny. And that's kind of how I felt about everything there. Sort of visually was new and shiny and slightly um it was as though the 32nd century was putting all their money into this academy.
A little gaudy, even.
Yeah, yeah. And so that's what I thought about the visuals. I actually did not like the title sequence. It was too sort of on the nose metaphor. And it didn't feel like a Star Trek opening, and the music was very muted. It didn't
Too
have
tame. That's what we got from it. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I was thinking, this is not boldly going.
It's just kind of courageously walking in the general direction of,
Yeah.
But to be fair, they haven't earned the right to epicness yet.
Right.
They have not earned the epicness of an epic theme yet, to be fair, because these are untested kids.
Which is why we said we'll accept it. Like this, it fits for what we're doing. It's not boldly going, as you said, Phyllis, but we'll accept it. It's setting up. Let's see what season 2 looks like. Maybe season 2 is gonna bring a bit more boldly going.
That's a really good point. I'll leave it for there. And I completely agree with Eve that there isn't a lot that's been earned yet, but 2 episodes in, I'll give him a break.
I'm with you, Phyllis. How about you, Eve? What do you think so far of the visuals?
It's not always something I pay too much attention to because I'm more about the characters too. I do agree with I do like the intro myself, but then I actually don't have a problem with the Enterprise intro. And a lot of people do, but I don't. To be fair, the Enterprise intro, if you actually pay attention to the drawings, fits. And when they do the Mirror Universe episodes and they flip it to the other set of drawings, that also fits. This having a song with lyrics is a little weird, but even the lyrics in a weird hammy way fit. So for me, I don't mind this intro. I'm kind of wondering why we didn't have the intro on the first episode. It only seems to be on the second episode that we see the intro for the first time. But I like that it's a little more muted and it's a little less boldly sounding because these kids aren't bold. These are brand new, wet behind the ears kids. They haven't earned the right to be considered bold yet. And because they're brand new. Even if this was 10 episodes in, they still got to earn it. The other thing is people who are fans of lens flares and shaking cameras are going to be very disappointed. I will say that because that's the first thing I'm like, hey, there's not like, lens flares here and there just for lens flare sake, I guess. I never understood that particular choice in other Star Treks, but, and we don't have the camera jumping around all over the place, which is kind of nice because that gets a little bit, almost makes the person have motion sickness when it's doing that. So I like that. I like that the CG is not, they're using a lot of CG, but they're not using a lot of CG just to use CG, if I'm making sense. The CG makes sense where it's being used.
Yeah.
However, my biggest disappointment is, what's his name, who, as was said earlier, shapeshifts into Mystique, the man version.
Oh yeah,
that to me was disappointing. That was really disappointing, considering we've seen much more interesting transformations, I guess you could say, in Star Trek when they.
You're not a changeling, man. Come on.
Yeah. When you said Mystique, you hit the nail right on the head. Like that to me, that was the most disappointing. That was the most disappointing visual in the whole thing. It's like, okay, that's it. I mean,
we've had skin like fluttering around his face or whatever, like from
I mean, we've had disappointing, visuals before with characters. I'm looking at the Discovery Klingons here, for instance. Whatever that was. But, that was real. Like, they could have done so much, and all they do is turn in blue. Well, that's fabulous, I guess. Kind of underwhelming for what they could have done and what they built up in that scene. that visually fell flat for me. But otherwise, overall, I like it. Like I say, we got rid of some of the past issues like the lens flares and the jumping and shaky camera, because that was just a little too much in some episodes. Overall, I liked it. When it was mentioned about the ships, one of the ships, I don't remember which one it was, but it has that part curving out forward like wings. And it reminded me of the scimitar in Nemesis. Because the scimitar had those wings come out like, it reminded me of the scimitar. So I have to wonder if maybe this far in the future, you know, we've got Romulan and Reman influence in the designs.
Well,
Just
we
a
know
thought.
that Vulcan and the Vulcans and the Romulans are united now. United, quote unquote. So that actually might make a lot of sense. Also, we like how you mentioned the first episode, they didn't have an opening. We remember watching it, and the opening of the first episode came up, and it's just that 10-second thing. And you know, that's really popular in like Disney films or like shows and like Marvel and stuff like that. You get like a 10-second intro, and it has no words, no song, and then you're done. And we said, we remember saying out loud, this better not be the new intro. It better, you better not have just gone like, all right, we're not going to do a Star Trek intro. We're just going to do a 10-second flip over and whatever. And we're like, this better not be it. Star Trek is all about their intros. So, yeah, definitely was with you on that.
Well, before, Dan, I was thinking before we move on to sort of general thoughts on, you know, our favorites and stuff, maybe I can throw it to Eve because she wanted to discuss something to do with the Betazoids. Eve, do you want to put a question to everybody?
Yeah, what the heck? Honestly, what the heck? It comes out of left fields. Like, I could understand Betazoids wanting to be isolationist after the burn and everything, but they're so different. Like, first, like the girl who explains that she's got the inhibitor, that to me is a complete throwback to Tin Man in, I believe it was Next Generation, was the episode Tin Man with the Betazoid who was born with all his senses wide open instead of them coming on naturally later on like they normally do, and it kind of messed with his head really bad. But what is with the thing that flies onto the guy's collar?
Oh,
and then
the translator.
The translator, and it comes off. I mean, we see the Betazoids, and they're using like a mechanized voice almost to speak, like an artificial voice to speak, and they're using sign language. So over the past while, have they lost the ability to speak because of being isolationist and being telepaths? They don't need to speak because we know Loxon and Troy preferred not to.
So other people have been talking about this. So the representative, is using sign language and is using the translator droid, but obviously, like Tarima, you know, she doesn't sign; she speaks. So
yeah, she signed to him, but
she signs to him.
I think I don't think that's a Betazoid thing. I think that guy is just supposed to be deaf.
Yeah, we think
that's
they
what
kind
I
of really
eventually
imply
thought.
Because he takes off the mechanized voice at the end to speak the yes in his own voice, and I think that was just supposed to. He was supposed to be the represent deaf.
Yeah,
but he should be able to just brain back and forth like Luoxana and Deanna Troi did in TNG, with anybody, right?
It felt like a weird shout out to, hey, we're diverse.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It felt like, and that's no disrespect to the, you know, hearing impaired community at all. But
hearing impaired. Sorry,
it felt like it was shoved in there out of nowhere. Now, if they had gone with, and you will know the episode, Dan, Next Generation, there's that delegation. His name starts with an R. His name starts with an R. Reva. Reva. I mean, if they were going to do something like that kind of thing, like with Reva, where he had voices who spoke for him, if they were going to go with that kind of thing, it would have felt like it fit in. But this felt like they just kind of shoved this thing in here from nowhere. And it didn't quite, I don't know, it just doesn't quite work for me.
So, Eve, we actually want to point attention at you there, because in that episode, we were literally just about to mention it. You got to it first, like, great, same page. in that episode, they straight up said in so many words that if he had still had the gene for hearing, they could have just fixed it up and given him hearing. But the only reason they couldn't fix his deafness in the 24th century, 800 years before Starfleet Academy, is because he didn't even have the gene anymore. It had been gone from his line for generations and generations. But evidently, that's not the case with this family, because both of his children can speak and hear and all that kind of stuff. So we have to come to the conclusion that this is a Picardism of some sort. Everybody kept asking, why is Picard bald? Well, because in the future they don't care about that kind of stuff. But we know that's not the case for disabilities in Star Trek. We know they can fix basic deafness and basic blindness and stuff like that with a variety of things.
And people have said basically the same thing about, you see guys in wheelchairs in the background.
Yeah, I saw that.
In robotic, at a time where you can have robotic bodies and stuff. Why there's still people in wheelchairs?
So there's actually an episode that covers wheelchairs. There are species out there from low gravity worlds that just can't, and they have to be in wheelchairs. So we let that one slide because we have seen a wheelchair bound character from a species that's just from like an incredibly low gravity world. But deafness, they had a whole episode where they talked about how they could fix that. So it was weird.
It felt too forced.
I like the diverse and varied ways that robotics and technology is portrayed in these episodes. I also thought it was cool that there is a deaf character, and that ties in with the fact of the matter that behind the scenes, Holly Hunter had childhood mumps that impaired her hearing and has affected her speech as a result of that. So I thought it was good that they were paying attention to diversity and inclusion.
So I didn't know where you were going to go with that, actually. I had a different issue, but I wondered if I hadn't picked it up, because when I was reading other reviews about things. But about the disability thing and being forced, if there's one thing that I'd like to see with that is, I love representation, but I don't think representation necessarily, and I'm privileged, so I'm not speaking on behalf of anybody else. So if I'm wrong, let me know, because I'm here to learn. But with disabilities or any kind of neurodiversity or something, I'd like to see something in the future. Like, I think that thing can be represented, but it doesn't have to be so on the nose, if that makes sense. So have somebody with what would be a disability of their species, right? And explain it that way, so that there's representation of that, but in the future, because otherwise I do think it feels a little bit forced. And even the people who can see themselves in these shows, which I think is really important, are like, oh great, so now I'm a token, right? Like, that's what I don't want to have happen. But like, easy for me to say, right?
On that prompt, we actually think it might have been really cool if they extended his deafness to psychic deafness to explain why he wasn't just because they can do that. Like, Deanna Troi is constantly doing that with Deanna Troi, and they didn't cover it. They didn't even cover it between the Tarima and her brother,
right?
Who by all means, they talked in sign language to each other, but there's really no reason they shouldn't have been, brain blasting between each other the whole time.
But here's the thing: is when I was reading reviews, one of the complaints was about the Betazoids was that people were saying, what the hell are they talking about? In the show, they said they were empathic, not telepathic. And that missed that.
Which
so I don't know
which is weird because in TNG they were explicitly telepathic, and Deanna Troi was only empathic because she wasn't a full Betazoid. Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
Yeah. So
Yeah, it
that
didn't make
was,
any sense.
that was a huge complaint online, and like I said, I missed it in the show, but that's what I thought you were going to say.
They also kind of
Like-
made the Betazoids a joke of themselves when it's like, when her weird fact about Betazoid that she throws out there is the naked weddings. I'm sitting there going, come on, like this was a chance you could have given to give us any kind of fact about Betazoids we don't know. And you go with the obvious low-hanging fruit of hormonal teenage boy, there's naked weddings. Wow, that's creative. I'm sorry, that was a big beef with me.
It was, we were really hoping that they would bring up something other than that. Beta Z has been featured so highly in every series from across the franchise. We really need to know more about their culture because, and this is kind of one of the things that where they brought, the new Starfleet headquarters will be on Beta Z. We're over here like, oh yeah, for a species as vain and self-interested as the Betazoids, that's a great idea. That's a perfect idea to get them on your side. At the same time, we didn't learn anything about Betazoids in that episode that we didn't already know, just like you were saying, Eve. And of course, the episode itself left way more questions. Why aren't they brain blasting back and forth? Why is this guy deaf? Why, what? We will say maybe the reason they can't all go full is because as a species, they're all maintaining the psionic wall. But if that's the case, they better start getting way more psychic, as soon as the wall comes down.
I think that, having read interviews with Alex Kurtzman about what's going on or what's driving Starfleet Academy is this idea that you don't have to know anything about Star Trek to watch it, because as they sort of said on the nose in it, this is a parable, a metaphor for kids today who have inherited a world that is dying and done for, and they're the ones who are going to have to be activists and fix it. So the whole activism thing in the second episode with the youth council and everything else was their modus operandi, their reason for being, as far as I've read, and that's my interpretation. So I think there's a little bit of agnosticism or cutting ties with the past a bit. Also the reason for setting it in the 32nd century and after the burn. So I think that it's a point well taken that we need to know a lot more about Betazoids, but it sounds like we're getting a Betazoid cadet, or Betazoid cadet and a War College cadet that will figure prominently in this series.
I think the thing that you learned about Betazoids, sorry to cut off someone, I found interesting was that you do have that little thing on the neck, and that can inhibit,
It was a little confusing though, because it sounded like it inhibited everything, and so why was she so good at assessing the emotional state of Caleb?
Well,
I find it also interesting. Like other people are assuming that they're not, telepathing between each other, but watching the episode, I'm assuming that they are.
Well, the reason that we say they're not is because Tarima and her brother had to sign language to talk to each other. And traditionally in Star Trek, when we get the whole Betazoid psychic thing, they make a big play about it with the whole echoey head thought thing going on.
Yeah, but I think that's it's just portrayed differently. Like I assume that is going on at the same time, but they're also speaking to each other, and that does happen in like the Next Generation and stuff. Even though you hear like the thoughts, they do use vocal speech as well.
One thing too that doesn't make sense to me, and they better answer it, why she would go off to the war college. I believe this is going into beta canon, and again, Dan, this is where your brain is way better than mine. I think it was in one of the books. There was one where Deanna was dealing with somebody or it might have been the show, where she was dealing with somebody when she was young and starting her career as like a psychologist. And it was a Betazoid who was basically a serial killer. And there was a big thing about how the Betazoids didn't even know how to deal with this guy, because the whole idea of murdering somebody or somebody's when you can hear their thoughts and know what they're thinking was just so abhorrent to them. And even when Deanna takes the command test, the reason Deanna keeps failing the command test is she can't bring herself to order somebody to their death. Like Betazoids have like this complete and utter it's abhorrent to them. It's disgusting. It's something that they can't even fathom. So why would you go to a war college?
Well, I don't know the book that you're referring to, but you are reminding me of like Lon Suitor and Voyager.
Maybe that
who was the killer and was Betazoid.
Sorry, fellas, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say that there seems to be a sense of evolution by the 32nd century that and also because of the burn and behind the wall and everything else, that they may have turned more defensive, more martial, or some people go that way. I think it'll be interesting. I don't remember Starfleet Academy having a war college. So this sounded new to me.
They said when the burn happened, they stopped having Starfleet Academy and they made the War College after the burn. And so the War College has been continuing, and now Starfleet Academy is coming back beside the War College. So they did explain it. Yeah, it didn't have a War College before. It does now. One thing actually we wanted to. Sorry, we had a thought there, and it just fluttered away. Yes. So one thing we wanted to mention is actually that neural inhibitor thing made a lot of sense to us, because back in the Dominion War, Dan, we think this is mostly beta. It is only implied in the actual alpha. So correct us if we're wrong here, but back in the Dominion War, when the Dominion attacked Beta Z, didn't they fry millions of their best psychics to melt the brains of all of the Vorta commanders or whatever? Don't they have a subspecies of betazoids that can literally fry your brains? So when she said that, we're like, oh, she's just one of those combat breed betazoids that can melt your brain, can pull a River Tam on you and kill you with their brain. All right, sure, yeah. So that's why she could still read his emotions and stuff with the neural inhibitor. She just happens to be one of those who's just built different.
I would actually say Michelle is more familiar with beta Star Trek.
Okay, great.
Well, I've not read anything to do with the Dominion War and Beta Z.
Okay.
Although I do remember the reference in, I think it was in the Pale Moonlight.
Yeah.
Going back into the Alpha, where they said that the Dominion had invaded Beta Z. Now, being occupied by a hostile force must have had some effect on them after the Dominion War, which could have carried forward over the centuries.
Well, and
possibly also explain their isolationism after the burn.
Well, and what we remember from that, when the Dominion War invaded Beta Z, as we recall, we could be wrong, but as we recall, Beta Z successfully repelled that invasion by frying the brains of all of their Vorta commanders in the Dominion, and thus that stopped the flow of the white, which promptly made all of the Jem'Hadar just start going crazy within 24 hours, and and that's how they repelled the invasion. But they killed like millions of their own number, you know, from the psychic backlash and stuff. Allegedly, that's what we gather. We could totally be wrong about it, but when we saw her have the inhibitor chip, that's where we're, oh yeah, she's just one of those. And then of course, being an isolationist nation, Phyllis, you mentioned the an evolutionary factor, and that makes a lot of sense to us because the Pon farr is established in Alpha to have only happened in Vulcans over the course of like 400 years. There was a time when they didn't have the Pon farr, you know, when Romulans broke apart from, because Romulans don't have the Pon farr either. And then it's established in the Alpha that there was a time where the Vulcans started having the Pon farr, and it was only like a 300-400 year time period. By that aspect, we have more than enough time for the Betazoids to have evolved to be more combative, as Phyllis says. So we think that's reasonable. Also, we like that her brother is a total jock. He obviously should have gone to the War College. You know, in the first scene we see him, he's just, yeah, man, let's go. Like, this guy. Sorry, yeah.
That's great, you guys. We have a few more questions here. Is everybody okay with time?
Yeah.
Yep.
Great. Well, Dan, I'll throw this one to you. If you could make any changes to these episodes, what would it be, and why?
Okay, there's quite a few, there's quite a lot. Like complimentary coffee is mentioned to do with the cafeteria, which people have been like, well, if it's the economy of Star Trek that we're familiar with, wouldn't like every cup of coffee be complimentary? I thought the tech.
Maybe they have demerits and chits in Starfleet Academy.
I thought the tech resolution of the first episode was quite convoluted and confusing, and I thought it's a difficult balance. It seemed to me to have like enough action but not too much. I personally thought, because I thought the second episode was a bit boring, but I thought the first episode was a bit too much action in it. So it's like, how that seems maybe a difficult balance to reach regarding pacing and stuff like that. I thought like the doctor gives the explanation regarding an aging routine, having added an aging routine to his program 500 years ago. And this is like 800 years after like Voyager, and to me doesn't explain like why he seems to age during the course of Voyager. I thought like that duration should have been longer to account for that. That would have been a cool thing if they changed that. I thought it was interesting. Phyllis talked about earlier the show. The idea behind the show is that it's understandable to perhaps the audiences who haven't seen Star Trek before. Watching it like the second time, the first time I was like really tired, I was falling asleep watching it. The second time I watched quite a bit of it, thinking how might this come across to people who are only familiar with like Legacy of Star Trek, with people who are only familiar with like the original series up to Enterprise. And then I thought like there's a quick reference to like all of the characters from Star Trek Prodigy, and I thought like maybe that could be a bit baffling for audiences who are not familiar with modern Star Trek to that extent. I agreed. The theme tune I think could have been a lot stronger. I wish that they'd gone into saying and talking about Starfleet Academy's motto, Ex Astra Scientia, which is on the promo material. But they don't talk about it in either of the episodes. Again, they talk about that instead, which is from Strange New Worlds. And I wish they'd gone with the Starfleet Academy motto. I thought there's repeated references in the second episode to this guy Turner. Apparently, I don't know who the person is. Is like
I thought it was
weird.
Just a joke.
Yeah. Okay.
I was trying to figure out who had I forgotten.
And I'll end with a reference I did love, which was a reference to the Borg in the second episode. I thought that was cool.
That was funny. We were like, oh, there's still a thing. Okay.
Look, there's a Borg.
Yeah, look, there's Borg, huh?
Great. How about you, Michelle? If you could make any changes to these episodes, what would it or they be and why?
Well, first of all, when we see the scenes of Nala on Bajor, I didn't see any Bajorans there. And I thought, well, where's the Bajorans? Also, the Dominion War is such a galaxy-defining moment in the history of the universe that we could have seen more about how has like Bajor changed and their relationship with the Cardassians changed over the course of the 800 years that have passed.
Well,
There doesn't seem to have been that much of a sort of bridge to between those moments.
we
How
actually
did things
have
change for
to.
Bajor and the Bajoran Cardassian sector after the burn as well?
We have to really agree with Michelle on this because in Discovery, you guys, Victoria and Michelle, you mentioned you haven't watched
I'm
like
not
a ton
familiar
of
with
Discovery.
Discovery.
In Discovery, the president of the Federation of Planets is a quarter Cardassian Bajoran hybrid. And she is like super mega perfect for the role, and they didn't feature her at all. They never brought it up at all. They featured Bajor, but they didn't cover it. So yeah, we can't agree with you more on that one. Now that we didn't think about it at the time, but now that you brought it up, we're like,
yeah. And as someone who holds a degree in history and politics, I would have really liked to have seen how those societies had evolved, as well as the Klingons and the Romulans must have been devastated as well by the Dominion War. How did those societies evolve over 800 years?
they did cover the Romulans in Discovery. The Romulan, because they, like in the Kelvinverse, they had the Romulan supernova.
Yeah.
So they
card as well.
Yeah, they all just mentioned, in Discovery, they all just moved back to Vulcan. So now we have the whole Romulo Vulcan thing. That's what we were mentioning earlier. We're entering into the hybrid era. So yeah, it's and they did cover that, but you're right, they didn't mention anything about Bajor, which is because that was a whole series that was covered around that.
It seemed as though Bajor was sort of a throwaway. It's like, oh look, this is familiar, Bajor.
You remember DS9?
I didn't want to change anything about the opening of the pilot. I would change that bit and say, let's get a bit more detail about Bajor.
Right.
Yeah.
And whatever happens in Bajor, because Cardassia is only 5 light years away, it's going to have a knock-on effect there as well.
Absolutely. And why is the school there?
You've brought up some really good between Michelle and Dan. Yeah, I think it would be hard for someone who hasn't watched Discovery or some of the newer Trek and who isn't in the fandom, because I haven't watched it, but I meet with people weekly, so it's easy for me to figure that out in order to like the next Star Trek. The other thing, though, as Phyllis said, there's things thrown in that. So I had to think about this the other day after watching it. What did it remind me of? And it reminded me of when just recently, like a couple of months ago, I watched Gladiator 2. And Gladiator, the original from 2000, is my all-time favorite movie ever. And I've seen it 50 or more times. Like, I love the movie. And I watched Gladiator 2. I thought, okay, I'll give it a shot. It can't be that bad. It was that bad.
So I've heard.
Part of the reason, and somebody who might not have seen the first one or only saw it once and has not a great memory of it might enjoy it. So again, if somebody's enjoyed it, that's great. But for me, it reminds me of this Starfleet Academy thing, because there's certain times where they go, oh, you should be feeling something here, but we haven't written it well enough for you to feel it. So we're going to give you a quote from the first Gladiator, or we're going to remind you with a string of music from that. And every time they did that, it was just like, oh, okay, so you're relying on my memory and my feelings for the last movie in order to feel something here. And that's kind of like again, I'm gonna be charitable because they're the first couple of episodes, but it did feel like they were throwing things in to remind us how much we like Star Trek instead of just writing it. So I like this Star Trek. And as for the young adult stuff earlier, I'm a huge fan of Veronica Mars. I don't mind young adult stuff. I watched teens for how many seasons with Veronica Mars, and I binged it last year. It wasn't like it when it was in. Couldn't get enough Veronica Mars, and so I don't mind watching kids, right? But you got to make it interesting, and as Eve said earlier, you got to earn my care, right? Like make me care. So don't just drop in a Kirk or a Nog here so that I'm pulling my heartstrings. So I appreciate what you guys said about, Bajor and why. Like they've got to make decisions and be able to back those decisions up with the why, right?
Yeah.
Well, let's move to you. Oh, go ahead, Michelle.
And just justify why we had to include Bajor without actually seeing any Bajorans.
Right, exactly. Because it feels empty, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So how about you? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
If I was coming into this absolutely unfamiliar with Star Trek, the first question I would have asked is, where and what is Bajor?
Yep.
Because I was coming in that I'm still actually doing a rewatch on DS9 just now, and I'm in the 7th season, so I'm extremely familiar with that. Which means, okay, where's the Bajorans?
Right on. Yeah. Yeah. I'm just starting the 6th season today with some friends. Yeah. So Philosophy, if you could make any changes to these episodes, what would it or they be? And why?
Oh man. Yeesh. So it's important to mention we are not a producer or anything like that, but we would and we don't remember who it was, but somebody earlier said like Starfleet Academy is supposed to be like the drop-in. You don't have to know anything to see what's going on here. Our experience with that is exactly the opposite. It was so full of fan service and self-referencing. Boothby Memorial Park, which we loved, super great. He's the second most important person to ever live in Starfleet, right after Miles O'Brien. But it was very much like watching the first episode of Strange New Worlds. We hadn't watched the previous season of Discovery when Strange New Worlds started. We were just watching it for Anson Mount. And then we went in and we watched half of the first episode, and everybody in the room went, we should definitely watch the rest of Discovery. If you're coming in to Starfleet Academy and you've never seen everything else, they're just talking about a bunch of people. They're doing the exact epitome of tell don't show. They're just talking about a bunch of people that you don't know or you've never heard of. Captain Gwendala Murphy, who knows who that is without watching the 2-season canceled show that got bought up by Netflix and got segregated away from the rest of the franchise. It's really confusing. Meanwhile, we know somebody else very early in this said they weren't a huge fan of Prodigy. But meanwhile, we think if they really wanted this to be accessible, they should have taken the thing of Prodigy. When we got Prodigy, these were a bunch of people who had no idea what they were doing. And at every turn, they had to actually ask the hologram what the hell was going on. Like, what is this thing? That's a replicator. It makes you food. What's this thing? Oh, that's a sonic shower. It cleans you. In a way, despite the fact that would very much be telling, that would be showing through the characters. They don't know what Starfleet's about. They don't know what the Academy life is going to be like. They don't know what this is. And they provide the Doctor, who they show in a scene can just pop into existence if you ask for him to answer your questions. So they had the perfect vehicle for, they had this guy that's been living for 1,000 years. He's the perfect vehicle. He can appear anytime you have a question for him, then disappear. He's the perfect exposition machine, and they use him to be an operatic. That's it. Just kind of, well, I mean, obviously he does some cool jokes with the slime and everything like that. That was really funny. But we feel like there was a lot of underutilization of legacy characters. And then instead of using them to exposit the history of Starfleet to all these new watchers, we just get snippets of, like, you know, Nog, Boothby Memorial Park, the Kirk wing
Pavilion.
or whatever. Pavilion. Thank you. Yeah, the Kirk Pavilion or whatever. And we're over here like, well, that's all well and good if you're a super fan who has watched every episode of every series and grew up with it. And when you don't have anything better to watch, you turn it on to Star Trek like us. But no, that's not the average watcher. That's not going to be the first people watching this. So if we could change anything, we would have had the legacy characters like Jet Reno and the Doctor way bigger involvement in explaining what was going on instead of just having a bunch of fan service. We think it was a lot of wasted potential that they just kind of let fly. And in that sense, actually, we unfortunately think that's part of a theme that recent Star Trek is doing. Strange New Worlds had the teardrop thing on season 1, episode 1. We are 3 seasons later, and they still have not even remotely implied what that might mean. And now we don't care. Now they still bring it up all the time, and we're like, oh yeah, this thing that a couple of people have or whatever. So they have now a time limit. And we think the first 2 episodes were kind of a waste of that time limit. They have a time limit that they have to explain to us things in a way that's satisfactory, and we think if we would have changed that, we would have used the time they have a lot more to explain where are we, what actually is Starfleet, what's the point of this exercise, you know?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with the wasted real estate, but I also think that they're ironically, that would be a great way to do Expo and the tell without the show. But for a show that tells a lot, it's not. It's trying to show Starfleet Academy without telling about it, and they don't have the. I certainly think that the pilot was sort of wasted in terms of its ability to draw you into this concept and to this, you know, it hasn't existed for 100 years. You mentioned why, but, you know, what is this thing? You talk about having to accept different paths to getting into Starfleet now, but how does that compare to what was? And you could even have Jem'Hadar woman complain about that or something to that effect. The one thing I think we off screen talked about warp breach or warp factor breaches, and one of the things that really bothered me about the action in the first in the pilot was when they're being attacked by the pirates. Forgive me for not remembering their name exactly.
The weird modular ship thing that he's got.
Yeah, exactly. And the programmable matter. And Caleb says, I can fix this. And they're going, and then basically you cut to them all in the control room or whatever it is, not doing that. Like, basically, there was why the hell aren't you attacking the programmable matter now instead of going through a whole bunch of other actions that's basically putting you into more jeopardy, which is, from a writing point of view, just vamping and increasing the jeopardy without it making sense.
Well, they had to showcase Mystique, don't you know?
Right, of course.
That whole scene, as far as we're concerned, was just to showcase Mystique.
Right, exactly. And that could have come later. I was very happy with him as the asshole bully, and didn't need to know more.
He made a great Lancer already. We didn't need him to be Lancer-er, you know?
Right, exactly. So that was, I think, but was for me, it was sort of emblematic of this. And they had a long time to write the pilot, so I'm not sure what was going on. I think maybe it was too many cooks, and wanting to show the cool stuff. And I harken back to what Dan said about that mix of action and drama that they have to find.
Great. Yeah. Thank you. How about you, Eve? If you could change one or two or many things, what would it be and why?
I have to agree with Dan, which is something that doesn't very often happen, Dan? But I have to agree with Dan that it was not balanced. We had too much of, action in one and too much of, nothing happening in the other, essentially. So it really wasn't balanced. And again, too, like somebody had said, like, it's supposed to be, if you don't know about Star Trek, you should be able to just drop in and watch this. But right from the get-go, that was not the sense I got. I got the sense that this was, you had to have watched your Star Trek to be able to follow this one, whereas Prodigy did it right. Like somebody else said, you drop in and these kids have no idea who they are. They don't even know about each other. They know nothing. So it works because people can learn alongside. And even Lower Decks, you can watch Lower Decks without having watched all the other Star Treks. I mean, it definitely helps. And that's where Lower Decks, I think, did it brilliantly, was they hit that balance of, let's make a Star Trek that anybody can watch, but let's also make sure we put a lot, not the right amount of fan service or Easter eggs or callbacks to keep it interesting. Like they did that brilliantly. This one, it was too many references to things that you have to already know, too many scenes that were reflections of scenes from other Star Treks. Like you really have to know your Star Trek getting into this one. And that to me just doesn't fit. If they're going for, you don't need to know Star Trek, well then why do you have to know Star Trek? Well, none of this makes sense. Some of the stuff they did push in, callbacks and stuff, I felt was a little forced. And some of them, there's some questions that need to be answered. One thing I would change though is the scenes where they're showing like they're panning over the crowd of cadets in a few scenes there. I would like some explanations as to what a few of those species are doing there. Particularly and I can't remember what their names are, but the half black, half white face species.
Oh my God,
that made me so mad because it was established in the episode that there was only two left. They were both men and they were both trying to kill each other. So how all of a sudden do we have like two women of this species?
Different women, visually different.
Yeah. Like, I'm like, what? Why? Like, to me, those ones stuck out like a sore thumb and I couldn't let it go.
Well, the TV movie Section 31 already violated that, being established in the original series.
Well, Section 31 violates everything. That's the point of Section 31, though. They have an excuse. Academy does not have an excuse. Like, some of the stuff there just did not make sense. Like, some of the species I was looking at, because I'm always interested to see which aliens we're going to get. And that one, I was like, why did we put those species in there? And there's a few others that are like dead species or species that we know don't interact with humans. What are they doing there?
And in the speech, she's like, some of you are the last of your kind, some of you are the first. And then it zooms in on the hologram girl, who is not the first or last of her kind. But we have these two-tone people walking around who very much should qualify as endangered species.
It seemed almost like trying to poke fun at, look how ridiculous the original series was, where it was trying to do diversity, it was trying to address racism with a half black, half white species.
Oh
And
man, when they came up, everybody in because nobody else in the house has seen like the original series really, and they're not fans of the original series. So when it came up, they were all like, "Why do they have this weird black and white two-tone people? They're so weird. Is this like a racial thing? Did they just invent this?" And we're like, "No, they're in the original series, but also it makes no sense why they're here at all."
But but it's those little things, and I certainly have not seen as much as you guys have, but it to me, it's like somebody who has sort of an idea of Star Trek, maybe been to a convention or two, but maybe doesn't even like Star Trek, was forced to write a Star Trek series.
Like when M. Night
And
Shyamalan
they're
wrote
like,
The Last Airbender.
oh,
Or
I just
J.J. Abrams writing the J.J. verse and he had never seen Star Trek.
right, he wrote the Star Wars, Star Trek university thing.
Can we say this is kind of thrown an aside here because mentioning the Abrams verse? One of the reasons we were disappointed that we didn't see a phaser fight in this is because we think that the JJ verse is like the worst thing to happen to Star Trek combat. Because it's in the JJ verse that we start getting people with phasers that shoot little pew pews instead of the straight line laser effect that had become so famous in early Trek. And so we're writing a sci-fi setting that's supposed to be like an homage to Star Trek. And the whole entire thing that we write is like their weapons never shoot little projectile pew pews. We're in the 2700s here. We should have weapons that work as fast as light. Come on, man. And some of the projectiles in the Kelvin verse and now in like standard Trek, some of the projectiles are visibly fast. They go as fast as arrows. You could dodge out of the way of them at like 20 feet. And we're over here like, we're going into the future. We're using charged particle weaponry. The reason armor doesn't exist in Star Trek like we know it, like personnel armor, is because the scenes where people get shot while they're wearing armor, they vaporize. So like we would think that we would have reached this new standard of personnel weaponry and defense, especially with the fact that in the least toys and with the Borg we have personal shields and stuff. Even in DS9 they mentioned like we're passing out personal shields to people for the Dominion invasion, but meanwhile, because of the Abrams verse, we have now a technologification of the world. We also think that with 27, we're in the 24th century, and for whatever reason, surveillance systems don't exist anymore. Like, we're on a military ship here, and there is not a camera to be seen outside of the hologram chamber. What's going on here? Like, so why do we have murder mysteries on a ship like this?
Well, before we get into, there's just a couple of more questions. Dan sent them out to everybody, but before we get into what we want to see in the future from this, why don't we go through the crew here and see what was your favorite episode so far. Now, let's just do 1 and 2 because I know some of you might be able to see the others. But Dan, what episode did you prefer?
1. I think it basically stands up there for a pilot with Caretaker for me, I think.
Great. How about you, Michelle?
I actually find this quite difficult to decide at the moment because I think I'm going to judge the series as a whole before I make up my mind.
Okay. Philosophy?
We think we're going to have to go with 2 on this one. It completes an arc. Which is really important. We've got the whole, finally Nala is making good on I'll help you find your mom kind of thing. It also really gets to the heart of the Star Trek dilemma. We're going out. We're trying to be diplomatic here. We're trying to make compromise and stuff like that. We feel like it more successfully established what Starfleet is about.
Right. And
I think I said at the beginning that I preferred 2. And it felt like a more fully formed story with the beginning, middle, and end. even though and with its little cliffhanger of where's mom. But the first one just seemed like pilots are really difficult.
Mhm.
And this one seemed like a pastiche of everything they were trying to do and got none of it done. So again, I still think that the characters are archetypal and haven't been deepened that much. One of the things actually I'm impressed by with this series so far, in contrast to Strange New Worlds, which got so ensemble that it was it was hard to even figure out what the captain was standing for and doing, and everybody has to be serviced. This had a clear Caleb is our center cadet, Nala is our center adult authority figure, and the others can kind of come in, but they're it remains to be seen. And I think it's a stronger series if they stay with a few as opposed to rotate. You know, this is the Gemini episode, or this is the Sam episode, or something like that. I can't say that that won't occur in the future, but I thought it was an interesting, different beginning for them.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree there. I did. There was some relief for me that there was at least some clear, okay, this is our main character right now, and these people can support that story. We can learn about them, but like we need to dig into a story. Right?
Yes.
And so if we can have an anchor, that would really be helpful. And I have been critiquing, but I'm going to disclose it to you guys. I am in a writing course right now where I'm learning in 6 months, I should have a screenplay for a movie as well as a pilot. So I'm talking big right now about what these people should do. And in 6 months, I'm going to be eating crow, I'm sure. But, I understand how difficult it is. But so we'll see. Maybe before I hand in my final assignment, I'll have to put it to you guys. But anyway, yeah, I agree with everything you said there, Phyllis. How about you, Eve? Which of the 2 episodes did you prefer?
I'm going to go with 1 because I'm sorry, the Betazoids was just too, it just did not work for me. To me, it just did not work. There's too much there that I should not be sitting there going, why, what the heck? I shouldn't be sitting there doing that. Like, it's
they better explain it.
Exactly. And
they better explain it at some point.
And I'm a huge fan of the Betazoids. Like, Dan knows Loxana is literally like my, she's my number one. Like, if I were to have a mom, she's the mom I'd want. If I could pick any mom in sci-fi, she's the sci-fi mom I want. But and I love the Betazoid, but it was just too much going on there that's not explained, that comes out of left field. And the first episode, we got our villain. And I have to say, I am glad we are not doing, let's fight the Borg some more. Let's fight, the Klingons some more. Let's fight everything we've been fighting. I like that we've got a new villain, a new species of villain. And he's, like, you could tell that he's definitely having fun with the role. He reminds me a lot of Amanda Plummer's character in Picard. The mustache twirling villain.
Yes.
He's gonna. The episodes with him are gonna be fun. He's gonna make a great villain. That part I really liked, and that's why episode 1 definitely is tipped more in favor. Is I'm like, yes, we're not fighting the same bad guys we've been fighting for the last 10 series here.
Has a lot of hardcore Fenton Mudd feels.
Yes.
We like that.
Yeah.
We like that a lot.
I half expected to hear, hardcore Fenton Mudd. Like, you half expect to hear that coming out.
You haven't seen the last of hardcore Fenton Mudd. Yeah, no, absolutely. And we need, especially after like Picard, where we got Vatic and all the like really dark, brooding bad guys. We need somebody who's just a little crazy.
Yeah, like, you know, and I like the idea that, you know, we could potentially see him being, you know, almost like a Khan for this generation of Star Trek fans, because we all know how iconic Khan is. Um, Not Benedict Cumberbatch Khan, but other Khan. I'm sorry, the actor's name is, I know his name, Montalban. Sorry, his name was
Yeah,
escaping
Yeah.
me.
Ricardo
Ricardo
Montalban.
Montalban,
Yeah, yeah, his name was escaping me. But you know how iconic he was, you know, and even Khan wasn't really a brooding villain. He was deliberate, he was calculating, but he was
Mhm.
also quite sarcastic and had his, you know, he had a personality. And I really like this new villain, and I want to see more of this villain. Like the pilot on its own, if I had just seen the pilot, I'd have been like, okay, cool, I can't wait for next week. After seeing whatever this Betazoid thing was, I'm just like, okay, what am I going to be seeing next week? Am I going to want to see it? So
Can we,
episode 1.
on the note of that, why does Starfleet have a wall? Oh, Starfleet Academy have a wall in the middle of a footpath? He was walking on like a sidewalk, and there was just a wall just sticking it, and he all jumped. And we're over here thinking to ourselves in the entire scene, like, why does Starfleet Academy have walls at all? But more importantly, why does it have a wall cutting off a footpath, like in the middle of a scenic overview to the ocean? Like,
Yeah.
We need a
really
defense. We need a defense for
Yeah.
the dialogue.
So he could
therefore.
sit
For him
on
to
the
sit on
fence,
it.
right? Yeah.
And if I can chip in here, I actually read an online interview a couple of days ago with Paul Giamatti, who plays Nusbraka, and he was saying that one of the characters he was inspired by to create the character was Gul Dukat from DS9.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay.
That's another fantastic villain right there.
Yeah.
We can
Dukat
see
Giamatti's a
the
Trek
energy.
fan himself.
Yeah, we can see the energy there that he used, the Gul Dukat energy. Definitely. Yeah. The self kind of, you know.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, definitely. And Dukat is another iconic villain. So if we could have a nice iconic villain, I think that'll bring it together nicely.
yeah, I did think that guy, that character was a little over the top.
A little.
Look, you guys, I'm trying to be nice here. I'm really trying. But I really like the actor, and I thought, okay, you know what? This is a fiction. It's like, it's okay if we get a little cartoony. I don't mind that. There just needs to be some foundation to it. So I'm willing to give it a go, right? And go forward with it. So speaking of forward, one thing this episode made me think about is what Star Trek is actually for, because that wasn't necessarily clear to me, and what it's for in this particular era. In a post-burn world, what should qualify someone to become a Starfleet officer? Emotional openness, diversity of perspective, technical competence, or disciplined judgment? And what happens when those values come into conflict? This is what I'd like to see. But so I want to blend that with Dan's question of, you know, going forward, what would you like to see happen in this season of Starfleet Academy? But maybe you can tell us what you think Starfleet is for in this era, and how you want these characters to develop. How about you, Dan?
I should and I will keep it to a minimum because I've actually watched ahead because I've seen the first 4 screeners.
Okay.
But I hope that the Klingon Jemadar, her background is more explained, and I think certainly I watched a short video on YouTube about the background of Starfleet Academy, and I think character is really important, more so than I realized before I watched that video, because it did talk about like the Kobayashi Maru and stuff like that, and that being a character test. So that came out to me like that as being, I think, important to the Academy.
Great. How about you, Michelle? What do you think Starfleet is about in this era?
Right. What would Starfleet be about in a post-burn era? Then probably they'll be looking for the best people to help them pick up the pieces. Get and try and get back to what Starfleet was about. Starfleet was about originally, in a way, but to also make it relevant for that era. Because after all, each generation has to pick up the mess of previous generations. And who's to say there still isn't a residual effect as also from wars like the Dominion War, which happened centuries previously.
Right on.
Yeah,
How
and
about
also,
you?
who are you admitting into the academy? Are you sticking with like the ones that have been in before, or are we expanding to practically the entire galaxy? Is there anybody coming in from another quadrant?
Right. And what do you think you want to see going forward in Starfleet Academy, the show?
I think I'd like to see more on sort of the background between News Baraka and Nala Aki. So I think there's more than there has to be more than meets the eye to that conflict.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, if it doesn't get explained, there'll be a few fan fiction theories.
I will be
there,
very
right?
disappointed.
Yeah. Philosophy, how about you? What do you think Starfleet Academy is for in this era? And what do you want to see happen?
So when you brought up this era, our mind immediately started working before you said in the post-burn era, because the first thing that we thought about is right before watching it, we looked at a Robert Picarto post on like Facebook or Threads or Twitter or whatever, and he talked about how Star Trek, by today's common parlance, has always been woke, like wokeness, quote unquote, has always been the thing of Star Trek. It's always been the background of it. It's always been the backbone, and also to point out, current day politics and stuff. So when you said this era, we naturally, before you said post burn, our mind immediately went to the Trumpian era, the current 2020 era, and then immediately we thought to the first episode, how literally the inciting incident for our main character is being separated from his mother.
Oh, right.
Being separated from his impoverished mother, who relied on a criminal enterprise to feed her child. And we are seeing that today in the real world. That's a major, separating children from their parents is a major scandal of the Trump administration. So when we immediately thought, like, well, hopefully with that prompt or whatever, the point of this Star Trek series is going to be, to stress the importance of family, maybe even hopefully even found family, and that, despite all of our differences, be they ideological, cultural, or even hypothetically ethnic, we can all get along and come together, for suitable. And we think they're actually setting that up really well, having a character who was born 4 months ago and knows nothing about society, and then in contrast having the Lancer be this total self-important jackass who is obviously from a species who does clearly consider themselves superior. How are we going to deal with this guy who evidently comes from a species who seems legendarily racist at its face? And then, of course, you mentioned, post-burn and everything. We really think that Discovery kind of set that same theme going up, with, Tilly had her cadets or whatever in Discovery, and ethnic and racial tensions were a major factor between that, with one of the characters actually coming from an antagonist faction who was from a house. He was an Orion, but he was one of the Orions that believed that slavery and, hyper-capitalism and stuff was only holding it back because you're a rich Orion and you have all of the resources. It's your responsibility to separate them appropriately and responsibly and so on and so forth. And we think that that opening of, separating parents from their children, and then leading in now to that second episode where there is so much very obvious cultural and racial tension. We have a character who literally cannot seem to do anything for anybody if it's not profitable to her, for example. That's Gemini. We think that all of these characters, alluding to what Phyllis has actually been saying, they're all kind of archetypes. We think all of these characters might be an analog for the real world political and ethnic archetypes that we have today, now. And so maybe the role of Starfleet in this post-Burn era is to kind of marry these various different political and philosophical ideologies in a sense that is not boldly going where no one has gone before, but instead treading old ground that we have been fighting over each other with for centuries at this point. Some of the same problems that we see are, we don't know what just happened there.
Yeah.
Hey, Dan.
Some of the same. Yeah, how's it going, buddy? A lot of the same problems we see are the same problems we saw in earlier Trek, but through a different lens, a lens that's more modernized.
Right.
We think the role of Starfleet here is going to be the role that Starfleet Academy is going to be kind of the inverse of the role that Starfleet has had. The burn has happened. We probably have the universe fairly well mapped out now. Like even just back in Prodigy, it took Janeway with Slipstream Drive, a couple of days to get to the Delta Quadrant and back. So the galaxy is actually very small now. People probably know exactly where everybody is, and now we have to deal with reclaiming rather than not boldly going. We think is going to be the theme.
Yeah.
Or would be the theme if we were in charge.
Okay, great. No, that's great. How about you, Phyllis?
Well, I actually think that this is a bit of, and the children shall lead them. It very much is a new generation with potential. And I think that Starfleet Academy is more about molding that potential to a philosophy, if you will, of reclaiming what Starfleet at its best in the 22nd, 23rd, 24th centuries was about. But even more is resting on new ideas and new ways of new perspectives. I didn't think, as Velocity said, about the universe now being a little more explored and smaller. But I do think that this is a more contained show, and I want to see the characters deepened, and I do want to see the conflicts that come up between races, between outlooks, perspectives, and what it takes now to be a Starfleet officer. And I'm sure there are people who think that it's a different, there are different requirements now that we're post-burn, and that we're really struggling. I think this very much reflects today's world, or the hope for today's world. And I'm interested to see how it goes forward, but skeptical. So I'll leave it at that.
Isn't that the standard? Interested but skeptical.
Yeah.
Well, and just to kind of blend what Phyllis and Philosophy said, I kind of feel like, yeah, I want the wokeness, but I want it to be meaningful. I don't want it to be tokenism, right? I don't want to just.
It can't be generic pandering. It needs to have a place.
Right. And so, but you're right. Star Trek's always been woke. That's what brought me to it. That's why I loved it. That's why I do it today. Right. And why we have weekly discussions about it. So, yeah, I do want to be hopeful. If they can bring that, then that would be great. How about you, Eve? What do you think Starfleet Academy is for today in this era, and it can be this era post-burn or this era of 2026.
I'm going to take a little bit of a different tack here. To me, Starfleet Academy, both in the real world, we'll just say, and in post-burn Trek, Starfleet Academy at its core, I think, is about hope. The hope that, no matter how bad things have been, no matter how bad things have gone before, things can get better because we can choose for them to be better. And also, I see something coming. Hopefully, I'm right on this one because the characters were a little too, here we have guy with tragic backstory who lost his mom. Here we have that, like, we had too much of the cookie cutter characters. But I think it would also be a thing of, we don't have to be strictly defined by what our family was or what our culture is or what those viewpoints are. Our holographic girl doesn't have to be defined by the fact that she's just a hologram. Our ex-criminal, Caleb here doesn't have to be defined by everything that's, in his past. He can make a better path for himself. The bully kid, Mystique there. I'm going to call Mystique.
We can never remember his name, so we just call him Mystique.
He doesn't have, he obviously, again, like you mentioned, he comes from a species that considers themselves superior. The Betazoids are like that. They consider themselves superior.
His name is Datum.
Okay. He doesn't have to act like that. I want him to be, I want to see where he realizes he doesn't have to be this way. You don't have to show you're superior.
Dying heroically is a real turnoff for me. So,
yeah, but
not die right now.
But yeah, that's what I see Starfleet Academy being to me is it's representing hope because, and this kind of ties into a question I got asked at Calgary Expo, which is our Comic-Con. I got asked at the parade last year because I was in the parade by the news. They said, with everything going on in the world, do we need things like Comic Cons and fandom and everything else?
More than ever.
Yes, that's what I said. I said we need it more than ever.
Mm-hmm.
More than ever. We don't have superheroes. We have to become our own superheroes. And I think that's what these kids in Academy, I think that's what I want to see is them becoming the heroes they need. Or like the holographic girl, her becoming the mentor she needs. I want, that's what I see. And the intro, you see the little plant seed and it grows into a plant. And it made me think of how even in concrete, the toughest weeds will push their way through and survive. And I see the Academy as representing that part of Starfleet, the core of Starfleet that can push through and survive, and maybe break up some of what's happened.
We actually really like that perspective because we were homeless. We were on the street for 8-10 years, and it was obviously wouldn't wish it on anybody, but it was a character defining experience that through that hardship we found out who and what we wanted to be, and we weren't as cognizant of it. We didn't have the direction, the motivation, the so on for it. And of course, when you're homeless, you don't have much help, so you have to learn things on your own. We had people, of course, occasionally trying to help us, otherwise we'd still be on the street. But through the hardship, you become something more. You be hopefully something better.
Yeah.
Not guaranteed, but that's definitely a thing. Yeah.
Guys, this has been amazing, but I have to jump off now.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Half hours is good.
that's great, you guys. Yeah, it's getting long, and I'm doing a watch party. I'll be watching Deep Space Nine in an hour. So
Exciting.
So Dan, should I just wrap it up then? If everybody needs to go,
please.
Okay, great. Well, we hope you've enjoyed this review. I hope all of you here participating have enjoyed it as well. And if anybody's watching and you have enjoyed it, please click the like and subscribe buttons on YouTube. Thank you for watching, and we hope you have a great day and enjoy the rest of the season. Trek you later.